acknowledge the Darao people, the traditional custodians of the land I live. I pay honor and respect to the elders of past, present, and future. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers are advised that the story may contain images of the deceased. The Darao people are the first peoples of Kembu Town. Unfortunately, their culture is partially visible. There are specific areas with the Aboriginal art and drawings. For example, the Bull Cave. Darao National Park is a significant place of importance to Indigenous Australians due to their connection with this country and land, waterways, plants, and animals. When I take a stroll going to the nearby shops, I get fascinated as to why Indigenous people are not as visible and recognized like other races. Aboriginal people being the owners of the land, I would expect their culture to be uplifted and emphasized in Australian society. I have observed the streets that surround me, and I've wondered where, in my everyday life and my environment, can I know more about Aboriginal people's culture, as I have barely come across Aboriginal art or sculptures in the public. I then remember that it is the history of colonization that has come into effect. The country was declared an empty land, terra nullius. Aboriginal people lived in small communities and survived by hunting and gathering. They used the land for food, shelter, water, and weapons. Due to the colonization in Australia, the Indigenous people's lifestyle had a great impact on their culture and land. This gave me an insight that since the colonization, not only was their generation stolen, but they were also dispossessed of their land. Aboriginal people lack cultural safety, a place where they will not experience challenge or denial of their identity. The city I reside in features both nature and buildings. I believe I engage well with my country. There are certain areas where one can experience nature, such as national parks, and also experience civilized life. After exploring my city, buildings dominate more than the natural landscapes due to the current city developments taking place for the future. It requires more effort to have access to a natural environment than accessing a civilized area. I discovered that there are organizations and activities that support Indigenous people's well-being and culture, as well as stores that showcase and sell Indigenous art. My experience with Aboriginal people gave me an insight of who they are, their country, and their culture. Prior to the knowledge I have now, interacting with Aboriginal people made me wonder why they required special attention when providing service to them. I held beliefs that Indigenous Australians live a traditional ancient lifestyle in the outback where they are primitive, uneducated, oppressed people who cannot fight for their rights. I now understand that the Australian land has a deeper meaning to Aboriginal people. I am able to empathize as I look at my own culture, the importance and how I do things based on my culture and my beliefs. I can imagine how traumatic it must be for Aboriginal people not to be able to practice their culture. Aboriginal people are mostly associated with intersectionality due to things like education, race, class, and culture. It occurred to me that Indigenous people are disadvantaged. I was curious as to why they are treated differently, but then I understood that apartheid took control over the Indigenous population and their human rights.